Episode 235, new setup as promised. It's good to be back in like a professional type of setting with decent lighting, an interesting background, and a nice camera. It's good to actually, a little refreshing. Um, Not so refreshing. Yes, everyone has recovered from the splurge of Titanic memes over the last 5 or 6 days. And this episode briefly touches on this, but more on and uses it more as an example of discussing why cutting costs is can be dangerous. And when it comes to the Ocean Gate thing, like that was a result of cutting costs. The owner of Ocean Gate was told multiple times by his colleagues that his craft, his submersible, is incredibly dangerous because it wasn't following or approved by regulators, nor was it following industry standards. It was rushed. It was all this, and I understand like the guy's mentality where he's like, "Oh, I have a dream," and they're the way the regulating companies do things. I can't pursue my dream, and I want to build a whole new system. I'm kind of in that boat too. Like, I want to build a new system. I honestly don't feel like I fit in within the current confines. I feel like I need to create my own business, my own apparatus, my own stuff to survive in this world because I feel like I can't really, um, in certain ways, survive in a traditional manner. So I feel like I have to create my own things. And I'm totally for rugged individualism and self sustainability, all that stuff with research, planning, dedication, and as self sufficient as I'd like to be, or anyone really wants to be, you do need a little bit of help and sometimes a second look over your work to make sure that it's good work and that it's going to achieve the goals you want achieved. That this gentleman, I believe his name was Rob, um, didn't do that. So the owner of OceanGate basically told his colleagues, "Go fuck yourself. I'm not doing that." And that's very, very, very dangerous. Um, OceanGate CEO. I just wanted to get this guy. Yeah, this guy's name was Stockton Rush, excuse me. So Stockton Rush, was like, "Yeah, fuck this shit, we're going." And what's unfortunate about Mr. Rush's decision to be so, I guess the word is arrogant, with his viewpoint, is that he decided it would be a great idea to get a child, a 19-year-old boy, his family, his dad, and then 2 employees to be on this, as well as, I believe a British explorer was on there and another gentleman, I forget, but there was a French scientist another researcher. No, it was Stockton, a researcher, a French dude, a British dude, and, no, it was yeah, I don't know. It was 5 people. Like, it was Stockton, the boy, his father. The father was a multi-billionaire, half British dude, half Pakistani, and then it was a French explorer and another researcher. So it was 5 people on the ship in total, and they decided, "Hey, you know what? Um, we're going to go down in the water, and it'll be totally safe." But the son wasn't so sold on it. The dad was really sold on it. The dad really wanted to go and um be an explorer of the Titanic and was super into it. And the son was like, "Ah, it's almost Father's Day or just past Father's Day, uh, I'll do it to make my dad happy even though I'm terrified of this." And the son was documented as being terrified. He's 19 years old. He's like the only dude I really feel bad for in this situation because he's just a kid. And he was just like, "Man, I just want to make my dad happy." His dad was probably really busy, never really got to be around him much when he was growing up. And he's like, "Oh, like this will be one of those, maybe it'll be a really cool moment that I could share with my dad. Maybe I should live my life more and take a risk and do something outside of my comfort zone." And normally, that's what most people should do is live outside their comfort zone, but not outside your comfort zone at 16,000 feet below the ocean where you could die. Um, he even cited his own safety concerns about it. But there was another father-son duo. There's another father-son duo here, and they backed out of the trip, and instead, the father-son duo that died took their place. So the son, basically what happened was with the other dad and the other son, um, they the dad was trying to surprise the son because the son was into the Titanic. He's like, "Yo, I got you like this sick gift. Like, we're gonna go and explore the Titanic. How's that sound?" And the son was like, "Ah, that's cool, man. Like, what's it called? Oh, Ocean Gate. Word. What is that?" So he started researching the company, being like a smart rich kid, bro. So he's researching the company. He's like, "All right, this is kind of sketchy." And then he's like, "Whoa, 250 grand. What the hell?" And then he's looking at like the specs of the sub with his friend one night because, instead of scrolling on Reddit, they're doing research and all that shit. And they're just like, whoa, like this is actually wildly unsafe. Like this is made out of horrible materials. So basically, what ends up happening is it's so weird. I have to like look at this camera instead of my computer. So basically, what ends up happening, right, is the son pulls all this data and gives it to his pops and it's like, yo, pop, we're gonna fucking die on this thing. I don't know how to tell you it, man, but I'm not going on this thing. I know you're doing it for me. I know it's really nice, but you gotta back out of this. Like, our lives are at stake. And the dad's like, all right, man, like, if you don't want to do it, it's a lot of money. I get it. Whatever, whatever. I think you're overreacting, but whatever. And then the sub imploded because Stockton was too arrogant and so focused in his mind of the dream that he decided to my camera just turned off. I'm sorry about that, guys. Um it is back. He decided to just ruin he focused on his business so much and his dream so much that he ruined the whole thing by cutting corners and cutting costs. And the main thing that he did to fund his explorations and get funds for uh this business venture of his to keep going, which his real venture was research. So his whole business plan was, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I want to be a researcher, right? I want to explore this thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring tourists with me to be citizen scientists while me and another dude are going to be doing the real scientific work and they're going to pay us to be on board here. So we're going to actually make them think it's some really cool thing, but they're actually funding research. So that's he did like this weird loophole thing. It's a smart strategy. But it put a lot of people in dangerous situations. Now they didn't know the risk. However, it was used as a means to cut corners on his research because he couldn't get government grants, he couldn't get state grants, he couldn't get UN international grants or loans or whatever to do his research. So people didn't think his research was that important. So he had to go through things himself. And while doing things yourself is great, bringing others along in a dangerous situation isn't necessarily great. It's one thing if you want to go build a business and you want to go influence the world through like a nonprofit or something like that's a normal thing. That's what most people that are kind of like off kilter do. If you're going to go exploring, don't bring random fucking people with you. Like bring people that are ready to explore and possibly die. Like those researchers, they knew like, yeah, I'm probably going to die, but at least it'll be cool. These rich people, dude, they're just regular rich people. That's not cool. And cutting corners, it's a big problem in a lot of workplaces where it gets people hurt. That's why unions are a big thing in manufacturing and trades businesses because they demand certain safety mechanizations be put in place so that people don't get killed or hurt on the job. And it happens anyway in union places, but it's much less frequent than people getting hurt or killed in non-union areas. There's like with construction, even when you construct buildings, there's buildings that are built where the material is cheap. So you'll have, paneling just fall off consistently, or the concrete won't be as strong, or you'll have, wood that's $60 cheaper a plank, but it won't hold up as well. There's a lot of cost cutting in that regard. In the media industry, there's cost cutting when it comes to rating systems and new equipment. And I've specifically seen this in the radio industry too. Especially the equipment end of it, paying your employees. That's a way to cut costs. It's doing as much as you can on a dime, which is, as a business owner, you don't want to just spend money. But you also don't want to not spend money either. You want to have a decent amount of coming in and a decent amount coming out. You want to be able to stay in a net positive while also investing in your business. The bottom line is you have to invest in your materials, which is something that Stockton didn't do. It's something that I've seen people in radio don't do, and then restaurant industry, forget it. If they don't have to spend money for, a month, they're happy. But, the main point I'm trying to say is you got to pay to play. Advertising is a big thing. I've seen people, they'll dump money in advertising, which is cool, but if you don't have the tools that are updated to have your business run, it's not going to be great. If you're not going to pay people well for what they're worth or what their labor is and brings in, they're not going to stay around. There's going to be a high turnover rate. If you're not going to invest in, you know, long-term plans and future equipment costs and set aside budgets for that, you're not going to expand. I've seen companies where, they need to physically expand the space of the company, and they just they can't do it, or they don't want to do it, even though it would exponentially increase their profit. Um, that's what a lot of it kinda comes down to, is that cutting costs, it ends up, like, hurting the business, or, it could end up killing people too. So, back in the 1900s, this was even more of, like, a serious problem. I mean, it's still a problem today, but not nearly as bad. I mean, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, that was a huge, huge development in public safety, because that fire, basically the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, killed like over 100 workers, 100 seamstresses, because there weren't fire escapes, there weren't fire exits. A lot of it, I believe, a lot of it was done because there was like primarily elevators. There wasn't safety precautions. There wasn't like clear cut stairs. There was no exits out the side. There was nothing. There were no fire extinguishers, no water extinguishers, no nothing. So a lot of people died due to safety problems. Now, of course, the technology at the time existed to put sprinklers throughout the building and to put catwalks and fire escapes on the outside, and, have like clear forms of exit, but it would cost money. There was a lot of overhead with that, and the building was already constructed. So they're like, we don't want to spend more money on it. If there was an investment in that, right? If there was an investment in the safety of the building, all of your workers would have been able to get out. And on top of that, if you invested in a sprinkler system, then the fire that started from a waste bin wouldn't have spread. It just would have been put out, because you had sprinkler systems, you had a smoke alarm, smoke detectors. They still had that technology in the 1900s. Um, but because of that fire, then the law came in, and the law said, "Hey, now you have to put this in. Now this is a state law and a federal law. You have to put in, in your building, any industrial building, commercial building, you have to put in, a smoke detector. You have to put in fire sprinklers, fire alarms, all that stuff, and you have to put fire escapes to protect the people, because when you protect your workers, they kind of want to keep working for you, and them being alive means you keep making money. So, yes, it is an expense, but it's also making you more money. And also, if you put stuff, on the side of your building to get people out safely, and you put stuff, more importantly, you put stuff inside to prevent a fire from spreading, you get to keep your place a business. So, investing in safety precautions and investing in things that expand your business and keep people loyal and happy to your business will help you expand. So, that's kind of like, you know, one thing that I've noticed a lot when it comes to people. And like, listen, if it's one thing if you have a dream to like own company like that, where you're gonna have to employ people and invest in expensive equipment and all that, if that's your dream, that's your dream. But you shouldn't nickel and dime it either. I am personally someone that likes to have minimal startup cost. I am someone that, likes to have things that isn't crazy. Like my setup right now here, this is a business. I have advertisers, as you've heard. Shout out to Collision Services Network, my man Peter Crouch. He was just on the last episode. That was a fun episode. His business, even, it's service based. He doesn't really have a lot of infrastructure he needs to maintain. It's a service based industry. With Bob Macedonio, he is a attorney. he doesn't really have a lot of startup cost either. He's providing a service. Me, I'm providing a service, and then I provide, I have to have some equipment. I have to have editing software. I have to have computers. I have to have a camera. I have to have lighting. I have to have microphones and all this. And a lot of this was bought through, just like from years of being into this stuff from when I was like 16, where it would be like, Mom, can I get this for Christmas? Or like I'd save up my money from working jobs, like since I was 15, and I'd piecemeal things. And then, when I was in college, I bought my podcasting equipment, my first podcasting equipment, and then I kept working, and I was like, all right, now I have money to buy this, and now I have money to buy that. And then it slowly pieced it together, and then I found a way to have an executable business plan. So, one of the things that I do is I go to people and I'm like, hey, are you interested in making a podcast? Yeah, I'm interested in it. Okay, groovy. Like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build you a podcast studio in your office or your home, and I'm going to run it and upload it and do all the stuff for you. And they're like, "Oh, that's really cool." So, they buy equipment. I write stuff out for them. They're like, "Okay, we're gonna buy the equipment for my house, and this is what we're gonna do." And there we go. And then I'll even bring some of my equipment at points because it's like, sometimes you got to fill in the gaps, or sometimes the equipment doesn't work that they purchase, or it's just it would look better if I had other types of equipment. So it's really finding ways to make a business plan that works for you. So like the way my business works is I don't really need to provide a lot of equipment. Everything that I have right here is for the podcast, but for what I'm doing and helping people set up a personalized studio, I don't really need to bring much. I bring my laptop with me, I bring my programs that I bring with me, and then that's all I really do. So when it comes down to it, is this gonna it just shut off the camera again. So what this really does, that's something I need to figure out. That I don't like. Um I think there's a timeout feature I need to work on this. But the point is that like, there's every business is going to have some type of startup cost and some type of um cost to um maintain itself. What I will say is that you need to go in knowing that, and go in knowing that you're going to have to invest in equipment and better equipment sooner rather than later. Like this whole setup right now, if you look at like previous episodes and videos of like what this podcast was up until like today, it's like it's markedly different. Like normally it would be like my shitty laptop camera or no camera at all, and it would be facing like towards my bed or whatever. Now it's like, okay, like I have like a dedicated corner, there's like stuff on the wall, there's like at least like it's an environment, it's in a comfy chair. It has a clear camera. Now none of this equipment that I'm using right now is stuff that I bought specifically for this. It's more um um designed to it's more like using old stuff that I had or borrowing things, like the light I'm using right now. One of the lights I'm using is borrowed from my mom. She has like a really cool therapy-based page. You should check it out. It's F Barone EFT, really cool. So she records a lot of stuff on her phone, and with this, $15, light, and then I'm using like a bunch of natural lights in my room to just kind of brighten everything up. I don't have fancy lighting equipment. This camera I'm using is like 10 years old, and this microphone I'm using is $20, So it's you to upgrade, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars. Now, I've seen a lot of podcasters pushing for the Rodecaster, that the cool audio board with all that bullshit. It's like you don't need to drop, $700 on every piece of equipment that you own. I have a Focusrite. That's really all I need. It really depends on like what you need. And personally, I'm more partial to the Focusrites because they're usually cheaper. They do the same thing as a Rodecaster or any of the fancy audio boards you can get. And it's very simple to set up and learn. It's plug and play essentially. And my microphone right now, it's a $20 microphone. It's literally called, I don't even know where the hell it's from. I got it off of Amazon. It's called Pile. It's a Pile microphone. And normally you would think, oh, it's a pile of shit, right? No, it's not. It's actually really good. Now, if I got like a nice condenser microphone, would it sound very crispy and stuff? Yeah, sure. But like, I don't need that. And that's another thing too that I wanted to bring up about this whole like cutting costs thing. Like there's also some people that go the opposite end and they ball out on the wrong things and cut costs on the right things. So they'll ball out on like a $300 microphone, $1,000 camera, 500 a $5,000 computer, like just crazy stuff like that. But then like when it comes to paying for advertising, paying for people, um, paying for programs, um, going out and networking, cutting that out. That's an investment. That costs money. You gotta have nice clothes, you gotta go buy food, you gotta go buy, gas for your car, by saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna go to these events, I'm not gonna talk to people." Like that's cutting costs in all the wrong places. You're cutting costs in getting your name out there. Now, some podcasts don't need advertising because they blow up on their own right. Um, it also depends who you know too in certain respects, but in other ways, a lot of it for the small podcaster, it's also the consistency too. It costs money to be consistent. So my overall costs with this podcast have doubled or tripled. Um, in the last couple of years just trying to expand more. Paying for advertising too is difficult. A lot of people do it through Instagram or through Facebook Marketplace. I'm sorry, Facebook Meta, excuse me, Meta. And it's very difficult to do that for a lot of people because, you'll throw money at it and then one day you're prevented from advertising on Facebook or Meta because your content may be deemed too controversial. So then you have to go to the old school forms of advertising. And that's tough because it's like, okay, well, is this really effective? Is this not really effective? Personally, what's worked for me and my business as a whole, which is Barone Media Solutions, is I there's a gym that I go to, and they have an advertising package, and I go there all the time. So while I didn't necessarily get a sale yet from that ad, even though it's been up for 2 or 3 months, I know that more people have seen it. People know that Barone Media Solutions is me, and then we have a conversation about it, and then I'm in the back of their head. Really, that's what advertising is too. So a lot of people are afraid to pull the trigger on advertising because it doesn't give them a sale, but what it does give them is notoriety. And that's what I always tell people too, is that like, you know, it gives you notoriety. I'm not saying to go and buy like a very expensive advertising package from someone to go sell something. But what I am saying is it would behoove you to at least maybe do a small advertising package just to get your name out there and then do it in a place where you go all the time. So people are like, oh, yeah, that's you, that's you. Because you want to sell in a place where people are already familiar with you. That's like half the battle of like selling, at least with my industry. So anyway, I just heard like a weird noise. I don't know where that was coming from. But, at least in the United States, see, like a lot of people, we're in a service-based economy too. So startup costs are a little less. But if you want to open like a brick and mortar or you want to open a bookstore or something like that, it's going to cost a lot of money. There's going to be SBA loans involved. There's going to be investors involved. So it's a much more difficult prospect. And there's going to be corner cutting. My whole point is saying like if you're not ready to fully invest like me, I'm not ready to fully pull the trigger on something like a restaurant, a bookstore, a, a technology store. I'm considering a podcast studio because that's relatively, stable. The only thing is the rent that's really concerning. But other than that, you just need the equipment and just a couple of hours to dedicate time to being there so that way when people stop in you could do their recording and then get out. Um but a major operation, there's going to be cost cutting and corner cutting, and while that is inevitable to a degree, making sure it's on the right things and not cutting costs on things like safety, um for payment of your employees, or the quality of your services. Cutting costs on maybe like, you know okay, you could have like, say you're in a restaurant, right? You could get like this the top of the line like gas stove. You obviously don't want like a piece of garbage, but you want something that's like more on the more like on the low to middle end, quality, where it's not like garbage garbage, but like low middle or middle middle. High middle, you're pushing it. But, like, you don't want something that's, like, garbage, but you don't need, like, state of the art either. Like, my studio right now is not state of the art. I could really ball out if I wanted to, but there's no need to because it does what it needs to do. What's left is see, here's the thing too, like, you could have, like, all the greatest equipment in the world, but if you suck, you suck, and that's really just it at the end of the day. So, you could throw as much money at something as you want, and it may not take off. But what will take off is if you have an okay, you have just the right amount of stuff, and then you have the passion to drive it forward and like the skill to make it pop. That's really what counts at the end of the day. Um, and that's what I've seen work for a lot of people, especially in the service-based field and even in like brick and mortar locations too. Like a lot of it is passion, a lot of it is because they're unique. A lot of things, like for example, like bookstores, right? You could go to Amazon and you could buy, but like a lot of people buy their books online, but small bookstores have a corner on the book market and can compete with big stores like Barnes and Noble because the smaller stores provide a local community based and a very different experience than what you get, especially in a corporate store, let alone just by isolatingly buying a book in Amazon. Now, Barnes and Noble is regaining in popularity. A lot of people want them back. They are actually opening a couple of locations on Long Island, so that's pretty cool. But it's a the way that I look at it is like there's like Amazon cornering the market, Barnes and Noble fighting back, and then there's like the tiny little bookstores. And here's the thing, Barnes and Noble, while it is making a comeback and people want it to come back, it is a cool vibe. They declined in the last 15 years. They're just making a comeback now. You have all of these little I really have to fix this camera. It's actually pissing me off. I forgot about the timeout. Um anyway, I promise I do this for a living. Um so anyway, what's but then you have like these little bookstores that had like a corner in the market and they already like live in the hearts and minds of people that are, you know, that had a service being provided and it was getting filled by like the small bookstores. So it's like going back to Barnes and Noble now is to get all these people back from these very unique and very hospitable locations. I mean, a local bookstore is very accommodating and provides something of value to compete with a corporate store that is the same in Texas as it is in Arizona, or New York or New Mexico or Alaska. A corporate store is going to be a corporate store for the most part. But what really gives it flavor is a local store, especially because it's fueled by the community. So you're going to hear things and see things that you normally wouldn't see in a corporate environment. Uh, that's the thing too. Like a lot of the basically my point is a lot of the brick and mortar stores have to create something different to compete with the corporations. A lot of small businesses have to have their niche because there is always a bigger guy that can do it better than you. But the reason people choose you is because you are you and you provide something that the big guy doesn't, and it's something special. And it's really just you as a person. Um, People will use you if you can provide something different. And what's sad about Ocean Gate is they could have had a really great, unique thing. They had something going for them, but the guy got so carried away with trying to achieve the mission that he lost sight of the mission itself. He cut costs. He put people in a position they shouldn't have been in, and he jeopardized the health and safety of his workers by trying to cut costs and achieve something on a budget when you shouldn't have been doing that. My whole point of this is basically using him as an extreme example is if you're not ready to fully commit to the potential of being having to spend money at the high end and you're only willing to commit at the low end, you don't deserve the benefit of most likely existing in the middle between the two. Sometimes you're going to have to make big ticket purchases. It just happens. S- m- Sometimes you'll get blessed and you'll get something handed to you that someone doesn't need, or you'll get it for like half or 75% of the price because someone doesn't want it anymore and they're moving or whatever, and you get it. Most of the time, you're going to be just kind of like You want the best of the best within a budget that's reasonable, and you're gonna get something that's pretty decent. I don't know how the submarining industry works, but logic tells me that most submarines don't fucking implode in the 21st century. And this guy was cutting corners. So I personally see this as is a lesson to that could be applied to the experience of a lot of people is that when going for a business, choose something that doesn't require a lot of startup cost and actually just kind of suits your needs. And if you are going to choose something with a high startup cost, you have to be prepared for the unexpected and you have to budget and account for it. And if it if you're going to cut costs, especially in areas of health and safety, employment, and um, material that is essential for the business, rather than cutting costs in other areas, you're kind of screwing yourself. Um, Maybe don't spend $10,000 a month on a fancy website. Maybe spend like 500 a month on a fancy website and an Instagram presence and then use word of mouth for the rest and take all that money that you were going to spend in advertising and put it into actual decent, you know, a decent healthy clean environment to work in, which is something Ocean Gate did not fucking do cuz now they killed 5 people including the owner ironically. So always, when you're thinking about that, just do that. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, really glad to be back here, episode 235. Um, this one was really cool because I got to use the new equipment that I set up finally. It's really cool to now have a solid little corner instead of just using my desk. So glad I finally figured it out and I pulled the trigger on buying a Cam Link. That thing is awesome. I've been working on this for a couple of weeks. I've been, buying and returning different things because stuff wasn't working. I finally realized that my computer, for some reason, my desktop is not working with the Elgato Cam Link. For some reason, it just lags horribly. But with my laptop, it doesn't lag horribly. And my theory with it is that because the Cam Link is a newer device, and my computer is about 2 or 3 years old. It didn't work with that, but my laptop I bought within the calendar year, so they must be on the same length. Probably not correct, but that's my running theory. I still can't figure out how that logically makes sense, but who the fuck knows? Half of the battle is just playing around. So, anyway, this has been another episode of Backpacking America. Thank you all again, and I am going to now crawl to the end stream button to end the stream, or I can grab my laptop and next time I'll set up my other thing. I have a stream deck, and that will actually end it for